Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it is, wherever you are listening. This is Ken Calcaterra, and welcome to my world. I am a visual storyteller by trade. I create stories with motion pictures or still photography. But that's what I've been doing for the past 16 years. And over that time, and even before that, I've had the pleasure of meeting a ton of interesting people. Artists, entrepreneurs, inventors, just great people with wonderful stories. And this is my chance to bring them to the world, to introduce them to the people I know, kind of play matchmakers, so to say, and introduce friends to friends via this wonderful medium of podcasting. So here I am. I've created this podcast. Sometimes documentary filmmaking or narrative filmmaking, it's just one thing that requires a lot of resources. And it's always fun when talking to these great people to say, yeah, I want to tell your story and let's put a documentary together, but it's not so easy to do. So I figured, why not try and create a podcast where I can put some of that information out that I've been wanting to do, that I want to put out in a visual medium, but kind of don't have the time to do it or the resources. So here we are, and my first guest is my friend Ben Wilson, who I met roughly about 10 years ago at the Listening Room Cafe in Nashville, Tennessee. And at the time, Ben, I knew him as a sound engineer. He was working for my good buddy Chris Blair, and both of them had that room just sounding amazing. And if you get down to Nashville nowadays, they're in a different location, but even more incredible sound and just a wonderful artist. So go down there. I'm hoping to have Chris on a future podcast so you can learn a little bit about what he's doing and more about what really inspired him and continues to inspire him in his venue, why he wants to bring these great artists to you. So I was down in Nashville for Chris's wedding and was able to meet up with Ben, who he and his wife, Cassie, they hosted me for a few days. And so Ben and I sat down in his kitchen where we talked a little bit about music, about the philanthropic activities they take place in, not only in Nashville but across the world. They go to Africa a few times a year to help people over there. Just wonderful people, and a lot of that comes out in Ben's music, his storytelling. And I didn't know him, as I stated, as a musician. I always knew him as a sound engineer, but I know he was playing with Cassie. I knew her more as a musician, as a songwriter. So fortunately, via Facebook, I saw they were going to be in town in St. Louis, brought some people out to their show, and was just blown away by what Ben was putting out. It was just a really great sound with really minimal equipment. Guitar, he has a little percussion setup, and it was just an amazing show. So with this podcast, you're able to hear his music. You can find his website at wilsonsongs.com. Connect with him there. Connect with Cassie through there. And if you like what you hear, help this artist continue to create. Look for where he's going to be, if he's going to be in your town. And the cool thing is they play house concerts, so they will come to you for a nominal fee and entertain your friends in your home. So really cool. It's a thing they've been doing lately, and it's amazing. So hopefully I'll have them at some point in my home. We can have a house concert. Also, if you're traveling in Nashville to go to the Listening Room, they have just listed an apartment in their home. They have a separate apartment connected on Airbnb. They'd be a wonderful host. They hosted me. They're just amazing. So check that out. You can find them on that website. Maybe we'll get them as a sponsor one day, keep this podcast going. But this is the first podcast, so I hope you enjoy it. It's a nice conversation with Ben. And from that, I decided, why not? Call this Conversations with Calcaterra. That's me, Ken Calcaterra. This is Ben Wilson. All right, Ben, thanks for talking with me, man. This is great. It's great to see you. It's great to be hanging out in Nashville.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so we met each other. I don't know. It was during the this charity event at the Listening Room. I think we may have a few times when I was down there. We may have met before then, but I think that's a time that I really got to know you.
Yeah, I remember I'd see you here and there when I was running sound there at the Listening Room.
Yeah, and all that time, I mean, I saw you running sound, but I never knew you played until at one point, I think it was a few years ago, I saw on Facebook you and Cassie playing. I said, oh, that makes sense to me. Yeah, you have such a incredibly talented wife. It's like, he's accompanying her.
Yeah.
And then when you guys, I saw you had posted a show in St. Louis, and I went and saw the show, and I was like, this will be cool.
Yeah.
And I was completely blown away. It was like, wow, this guy I've known, but I never knew the talent level. When did you start playing?
I've been playing guitar and singing for 20 years probably now. You know, since I was young. My brother kind of taught me guitar a little bit, and started doing a little bit of poetry writing and songwriting back then. You know, it was just basic stuff. But you know, it's been a process because when I moved to Nashville, I'd stopped playing and singing pretty much altogether because there were so many musicians here and artists and writers that were so much better than I was, especially guitar players that were so much better than I was. And it was just overwhelming. So I moved here to go to audio engineering school. So, you know, I do studio work and whatnot. And so I was focusing on that. That's why I was at the Listening Room running sound when you'd see me. But and gradually, you know, especially because I married Cassie and she was a singer, started playing backup, you know, singing backups for her and playing guitar for her. And eventually, even I would say recently, I just started wanting to do my own artistry again and started writing songs for myself again. And it's been really refreshing, and I'm glad that I'm writing the things that I really enjoy writing for myself again.
It's great that you're able to take something that means so much to you and tell a story with your songs. And that's one thing. I was talking to another friend of mine recently, and he was talking about, you know, in this day and age, the music industry has changed, but the songwriter, the singer is a troubadour, and it's putting out this message that ultimately is going to make the world a better place. It's going to influence people. I see or I hear a lot of that in your music. There's a lot of messages. What would you say if you had one message or one theme that you were going to get across? What do you think that would be?
I think that one thing that I would try to get across would be for people to live with critical thinking, if you will. You know, I feel like there's too many people who go through life not really thinking about the things they do. They're just doing things because they want to, or they're doing things just because it fell in their lap, or they're just going with the flow of life. And that's fine sometimes, but I feel like there really has to be purpose and critical thinking involved. And, you know, that travels into all sorts of areas of life, whether it's spiritual life. I'm a Christian and a believer in God and in Jesus, and that shows through in my songwriting too. You know, I wouldn't be here, we wouldn't be anything without God in our lives and without His, you know, His character and everything that He's done for us. And so that shines through in my writing. And not only that, but things that God is passionate about, I am becoming more passionate about. Helping people, you know, philanthropic work, I think that's the right word. You know, really helping people who are less privileged than us, really trying to help people out of poverty, helping people who are oppressed, helping people who are treated unfairly. And we may talk about it later, but that has to do with a lot of my trips to Africa too that me and my wife lead. But, you know, even on the trips that we do lead, I tell the team, that we really need to focus on thinking critically about everything that we do, the decisions that we make, just being conscious of everything that we're doing and having a purpose in life.
Yeah, definitely. And that's when I went to film school, that was one thing. Part of it was a liberal arts program. I did film production. That's what I studied. And at the time, we would take media and the law, or law and media. We would take ethics and media literacy, things like that, to understand what we're watching, what we're creating. And I know recently, I think they've eliminated a lot of those as part of the core curriculum. I think they can still be taken as electives, but it's one of those things that I think just because you can do these things, just because you can write a song, just because you can make a film, video, whatever it is, I think looking at, how does this affect people? Mm-hmm. What are we watching, whether it be a reality show or, when we see those things, we take those things as real, as truthful. Mm-hmm. And so it's good to understand those things. So I like when you're talking about critical thinking and looking at that and looking deeper at things, and just, okay, well, I'm going to go get an education just so I can learn how to push the buttons. Mm-hmm. But what am I pushing the buttons for?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
What am I recording? What do I want to say? And I think in this world of social media, I think people a lot of times are just don't have an original voice.
I agree with you, and a lot of pop music, it's a shame, A lot of the artists didn't write the songs that they're singing, and that's not so much of a problem, but it kind of does feed into the problem of artists, whether you're a painter or a musician or an architect, artists not getting behind something and and portraying their original art. Too many, I feel like, are in it because that's what America feeds you into, like you gotta be famous and people have to know your name and you have to have money and you have to have certain things, in a certain status. And it's kind of a shame where we've lost some of the original intent of the beauty of art and creating art and even using art with a purpose behind it, Yeah. So when I write my songs, I try not to write just with the intent of, I hope people are going to like it, or I hope it's the status quo. I really try to have an original art and do what I really love to do. And hopefully people do like it,
Yeah, definitely. It's so easy to get caught up into that. I think our society now is all about money, and I've gotten caught up with that in my art. It's like, oh, if I do this, I can get rich, and maybe that, like, originally that was a driving force. Mm. And then as I learned to tell stories better, it just became this passion. It's like, I have to do this. Okay, I'm not making money, I'll do it anyway. Mm-hmm. I think there's still, as I drive well, something could happen. But I think now it's just looking at, all right, well, I'm able to do cool things. And that's part of what this podcast is all about. It's just, hey, this is something easy to talk about cool things with just cool people that I know and introduce them to the world.
Sure.
Whether it be artists, whether it be healers, people doing charity, business people, just interesting people, and talk about some deeper things. Mm-hmm. And that's one thing, definitely. I know there's a lot of deeper songs on your album. Mm-hmm. And I was listening to it driving around yesterday to, just to try to figure out some of the intricacies and some of the things in there. It feels good, and it's it's kind of a chill album. I see, something that, I don't want to, if I'm going to get pumped up and I'll go work out, I'm definitely,
probably won't put my CD in for that.
Not going to put it on for that, but just to chill out and think.
Yeah.
What are some of what is one of your favorite songs on the album? If you said, hey, you can only listen to one song on this album, which one do you think you would tell people to listen to?
I really like this song I wrote called Dump Child. And it's a darker song. It stems from our travels to Africa. And, when I went there for the first time and every time after that, I've seen things that I never thought I would see in my life. Like I'd seen them on TV maybe, or heard about them. And when those two things happen, they don't affect you as much. They don't hit home as much. But when you see it firsthand, it's really powerful. And it rearranged some things in my life. It rearranged some priorities. And so Dump Child is about... It's technically fictional because the actual story is not true to a specific story, but this happens all the time in third world countries where someone is living in a trash dump and that's how they're sustaining themselves, and that's just where they're living with their family, you know. And it kind of takes you through a story of someone who's living in that situation.
And that's a character of Ebenezer?
Yes. So the child, the dump child, is Ebenezer. Yeah, that's his name.
Yeah. When I first heard that, so we brought some friends out when we were in St. Louis, and that just seemed like that was a song that, I mean, I'm not very knowledgeable. You said it was folk music, right? Folk, like alternative folk, is what you consider your genre?
Yeah, alternative folk rock.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And listening to that, so that's a genre I know a little bit about, but not a ton. I don't really know the history, but so when I'm listening to that song, it seemed like that was maybe like an old staple. It seemed like that was, I don't know, that was a song I could say, if you think of somebody with an old soul, it was just something that like, oh, is this a cover song? And then I talked to you later and, oh no, this is one of my originals. And it was like, wow.
Yeah, well,
that just seems like a song that I might have heard from the 60s, like a Dylan song or something.
That's awesome. That's a great compliment.
So it's just, man, really, really cool song.
Thanks.
Really deep.
Yeah, it's it's harder for me to put that one into some live show situations just because the subject matter is pretty dark. On some shows, some people aren't trying to come out so that they can really think about dark stuff, They're just trying to come out and maybe have a good time. But I try to throw that kind of stuff in there sometimes. Like I said, my music is all about kind of getting people to think critically. And so I throw that stuff in there when I can. When I can kind of slide it in there and make people aware of it.
Ebenezer, your mother was raped by a soldier and left for dead outside of Addis. She moved to the trash dump and made herself a home at Cora. That's where you were born. Dump child.
Yeah, that was track number 2 off your album Wilson. Real quick, while we're at it, where can folks find this music?
I'm online at wilsonsongs.com. That's the main hub of what I'm doing. Also on Facebook, facebook.com/wilsonsongs.
Excellent. Yeah, it's good to get this kind of music out there. And I think you were talking before that in a live show, you don't always want to play a deep, thoughtful song. Because people, a lot of times, hey, this is entertainment. I want to go get some drinks. I want to kind of escape from the world. But I think it's good. And a lot of people you see go to a U2 concert, and Bono definitely has a strong message about worldly type things. And I've heard people say, well, why is, he's a rock star. Why is he saying this? I have to bring it in. And it's just like, yeah, he doesn't have to say this. I mean, Bono he's probably doesn't have to work another day in his life, and he would be fine, but he takes the time, and in his free time, that's what he's doing. Working with less fortunate people, going to Africa, working with the Pope, things like that, which is something that you and Cassie are doing with your mission trips. How many years have you been going to Africa and working with children there?
Well, we've been to Rwanda, Africa, probably 4 times now, about every year. So I'd say 3 or 4 years we've been going there. We lead teams with an organization, and it's called Visiting Orphans. And mainly what we do is go and invest time and energy into kids who are less privileged than us, and a lot of them who don't have families, so in the orphanages. So yeah, we're going back in January, and it's a really powerful experience for both parties involved. For the team members that are going from America, it's a really powerful thing, just to be able to put things in perspective and see things that, like I said, that you'd never seen before, and to just kind of realize, inadvertently, it just kind of helps you realize what's important in life. And that affected me long term. It wasn't just like I came home and it affected me for a couple weeks or something. Literally for the past 3 or 4 years, it's been a different trajectory for me. My life has. So, and not only the team members, but the people that we visit, we try to spend time with these kids and invest time with them. We see a lot of the same kids every time we go back, so we know who they are. They know who we are, and if we can, we try to have some time where we can teach things to them. Maybe it's hygiene stuff, maybe it's Bible studies and theologies, things like that. But we just try to listen to however God wants to lead our team to do whatever He wants us to do over there. Then we try to be open to that, because that's what's really important. He knows what's going on better than we do. So yeah.
Any particular story of a kid that you've worked with that just stands out, or one of those moments where you were there and you can see how it changed their life?
Well, so we also work with this organization called His Chase, and basically what they do is they're setting up child sponsorship programs. And so a lot of in the orphanage that we would go to all the time, they set up a child sponsorship program for the kids in that orphanage. And probably one of the best things that I've seen, from our trips and from people associated with what I'm doing over there, is this program. I don't know how many hundreds of kids were sponsored from this orphanage by people in America. And one of the best ways to help a community, a country, a family out of poverty is education. I mean, education is key, and the public school system over there is not up to par. It's just not good. And for these kids to have a private education like they're getting through this sponsorship program is amazing for their lives. I mean, it's gonna give them the chance to have a successful life, if you will, to not always be needing for things, to not be living on the streets, and to be able to help others and to be able to lead others. I mean, they're getting an education to where they can really be leaders and people who influence the other people in their country. And that is one of the best things I've seen as far as our team's going and what I'm associated with there. A lot of team members that we take end up sponsoring kids and whatnot. It's all around, it's an amazing thing what's happening in that area, among many other things that I didn't mention, but yeah.
Now, do you on your Facebook page or do you have a separate Facebook page that with photos of these trips and things that you're doing where people can see what's going on, or is there an organizational website where if somebody wants to look and go sponsor a child that they can find out more about this?
Yeah, so the site for the His Chase organization is hischase.org, hischase.org. And that's the organization where you can sponsor a kid specifically from one of the orphanages that we, visit regularly. And it's an amazing organization. I would encourage, the listeners to check that out. And as far as, on my Facebook, my personal Facebook, I guess you just have to get to it through my Wilson Songs Facebook somehow.
Cool.
But I posted lots of pictures of our trips there. Nice. And so has my wife, Cassie, on her Facebook. We post pictures every time that we go of all our trips. So, yeah, check them out. It'd be great.
Cool. And just, I guess that's a good segue, talking about Cassie. So when I first met her, my father and I had come down here with one of my younger cousins, so my cousin's son, and brought him down here for some little festival. So he was singing. He was 16 at the time. And then we went to this karaoke place in Prenter's Alley.
Wow.
And we're in Nashville right now, so for the audience that's listening to this, so we're sitting in Ben's kitchen in Nashville. And so in Prenter's Alley, and Cassie has this distinct look. Her performance style, she's highly energetic, and it was like, oh, this girl's cool. And so I think she and some of the other singers brought my cousin up there. He sang a few songs and whatnot. And then years later, I'd known you. Yeah. And then at one point, I guess when I came down here, this is my wife, and it was like, oh, I kind of know her.
Yeah.
And, looking at that, you're talking about influences, and she just has an incredible voice. She's very passionate about music. I mean, we'll get to earlier influences later, but as far as having a wife that is such a wonderful musician and singer, how does that influence your work?
Well, like I said, I wasn't doing any of my own artistry when I moved to Nashville for a long time. So I started playing guitar for her and singing backgrounds for her. And then we started writing together. That was several years after I moved to Nashville. And so, her songwriting style and really the country industry has had an influence on me in the way of songwriting, number one, just because of it's more storytelling. It's more has a certain form to it, and I don't come from any type of country background whatsoever, and the songwriting that I came from when I was growing up is just pretty much all free form stuff, and there's like no rules. And to have those two come together was really cool. And so we started writing songs for her album. And so for her second album, we pretty much co-wrote all the songs together. And we call it a country soul style. And it's really kind of a cool mix of what I grew up with and what she did. And so, yeah, her songwriting and artistry influenced me in that way. And in the way that we just kind of melded some things together and came up with this new cool kind of thing that you can hear on her latest record.
Nice. What's the title of that record?
That is self-titled, so it's just Cassie, and it's with a K, Cassie.
Okay, right on. Yeah, that's cool, and that's one thing that when one of my friends had mentioned. I mean, she just with Cassie's voice, and I think my friend had said she sounds a little like Emmylou Harris. I don't know. I'm not the old country. I don't know as well. So I'm probably butchering this comparison or forgot exactly what she had said, but she definitely has that kind of that old country sound, like some of the legends have.
Yeah, she. I don't remember if I said it, but we call her stuff like country soul, and so she definitely has a country background, and she listened to country music growing up and loves. Patsy Cline and the old classic country, and has a tinge of that in her voice. But then she has kind of the raspy soul influence too, which makes for a pretty cool little combination. Yeah.
And that's what my friend said. I wasn't going to tell you this, but my friend said, he's great. But wow, when I hear her, and I was like, I bet you he probably, I don't think he would mind that.
Yeah, no.
But
she's a great singer.
Yeah.
She really is.
But I think the two, at that show, seeing the two of you play together, and that I had seen her before and I hadn't seen you play, it was a nice combination. And hearing her on your record, as I was driving around yesterday, I was listening to, I think one of my favorite songs on the album is Feels Like Home. And it's just, that's such a cool song, because you're saying, you know, home is wherever you are, whenever we're together, that's home. And I think that's just really poetic, and that's just a really cool story. And then hearing her, you know, the backgrounds, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm pretty sure this is Cassie, but I didn't. Since you had To the Moon, another song on there that's featuring Cassie, I was like, wait a second, that has to be her in the background vocals. What? I mean, the two of you being together. Tell me a little bit about that song and how you felt when you were writing it.
So the two songs that you just mentioned are the two songs that Cassie has co-wrote with me on the album. The rest of them that I wrote by myself. And actually, To the Moon, and actually the ones you mentioned earlier also were not just written by Cassie and me, but by another writer named Becky McLeod.
Okay.
And so, you know, that Feels Like Home song, I had that idea, and, you know, we mentioned the traveling to Rwanda, which we do quite often, and not only that, but traveling inside the U.S. To play shows and weddings and private parties and whatnot. I've traveled without Cassie very rarely, and it's just not as fun, you know? It doesn't feel right, and I always feel like I want to get back home, if you will. And so when I'm traveling with her and when I'm with her, it really does feel like home.
Lines, but I'd be counting lines. Road lines and state lines, song lines and phone lines. Mine, yeah, but this is mine. This life with the one I love is mine. And what more could I need? And where else would I be? Where would I be? It feels like home. It feels like home. Anywhere with you feels like home. Anywhere I roam, anywhere I roam. Anywhere with you feels like home.
You can find that at wilsonsongs.com, and we're talking here with Ben Wilson, my good friend, and talking about a lot of different things. So growing up, who were some of the influences? You talk about that soul influence. Who'd you listen to growing up?
Who did I listen to? Cassie more had the soul influence. She listened to old country and kind of some soul music. Growing up, for me, I would say I listened to what was a big influence on me was alternative rock music.
Right on, I listen to a lot of that myself.
So, you know, Counting Crows, I can't express how much of an influence they were on me. I remember when I was first introduced by my brother to the August and Everything After CD a long time ago. Yeah, oh my gosh. And right away I really felt connected to it for some reason. I don't know if it was the way that Adam Duritz sings or the way he writes, but it really felt like comfortable to me. And ever since he introduced that to me, I've just really gravitated towards them and loved them so much. And so many of their records are great. And, you know, I think I have a lot of influence from them in the songwriting style, in the way that he sings. And, yeah. And, you know, even when I was younger, I really listened to mainly Christian music growing up, and that was kind of a effect of my family, I guess. You know, I grew up in a Christian family, and I was listening to just a lot of Christian music. But when I was first introduced to, you know, stuff like Counting Crows and other alternative rock artists, I really gravitated towards that stuff, and I really loved it. So yeah, like I said, I didn't listen to really any country music. So when I moved to Nashville, everything was new for me. Country, I I didn't know anything about country music. I play a few country songs now, but not that many. I kind of still try to stick with what I grew up with.
Sure.
Yeah.
And your style is great, so it's you got to go with what you know, what feels right. Where'd you grow up?
That was in Iowa. Yeah, Oskaloosa, Iowa. My family actually still lives there. I went to middle school and high school there. Yeah.
Right on. Yeah, I've done a little bit of work in Iowa, some video work over the years. So yeah, it's a pretty interesting place. I know they have, and you ride mountain bikes. Have you ever participated in the RAGBRAI?
Oh, right. I haven't been a part of RAGBRAI, the Great Ride Across Iowa, but my brother sold Gatorade on the side of the road for RAGBRAI a couple times. So
like when he was younger or recently?
Like recently.
All right.
Yeah. So that's my only connection to RAGBRAI.
Right on. Yeah, I'm going to try that one of these days. So speaking of mountain biking, Nashville has many great trails. Where do you like to ride around Nashville? Or somebody that's coming down here, where should they check out?
I've rode a few mountain bike trails around here. I think maybe because it's closer to my house, but the one I kind of gravitate towards, there's one down in Cane Ridge area. It's in the Antioch area. And there's a pretty decent trail down there I like to ride. But usually I just like to ride around on the streets. You know? I live near Nolensville Road, and it's a very like eclectic, very ethnic place, and there's just random stuff everywhere on Nolensville Road. Like a Thai restaurant on one side, and then there's like a Mexican market over here, and then like just random stuff everywhere. And I love just riding around, just exploring and seeing all these new things and seeing new neighborhoods that I hadn't been to before. And there's some neighborhoods around here that are very interesting. I would probably call them impoverished neighborhoods, but usually those are the most interesting. You ride around, you just see just random stuff in people's yards with the most random colors on people's houses. Yeah, I love seeing that stuff.
Yeah, it's just part of America. This is a different. The diversity. I know you were telling me earlier before we started this, you do some volunteer work here in Nashville with kids, so we're carrying on that theme. What is that something you started doing before you went to Rwanda, or is that something that by going there you reached out and searched for something a little closer to home? How'd you get involved in all that?
That was actually before I went to Rwanda. So me and my wife Cassie were going to a church, and they were talking about this program called the Youth Life Learning Center, and that's the website, I think, by the way. Actually, it's yllc.org, I think the website is. And mainly it's an after-school program, a Christian-based after-school program, and it's for at-risk kids. And the center that we work at, which there's I think 5 centers around the city of Nashville, is in a neighborhood that is, kind of impoverished, and there's a lot of at-risk kids there, if you will. And I guess that might be the first time that I realized that I really enjoyed working with kids, and that I really could be a purpose of mine, if you will. Before that, I'd never really worked with kids. And it's an amazing thing. I can say that it's a great program. It really is, because they have a great balance of teaching the kids, topics, education, helping the kids with schoolwork, and yet also focusing on the spiritual aspect of teaching them, Christian topics and topics out of the Bible and whatnot. It's a really balanced program. And me and my wife love volunteering there, and we, have good relationships with a lot of the kids there.
That's great. So you moved from Iowa to Nashville in, what was it, 2006?
Yeah.
And that was for school?
Yeah, I went to audio engineering school. So SAE, School of Audio Engineering. Very good name. Anyway, yeah, and then after that, right out of there, I started working in this small recording studio called Jay's Place on 16th Avenue. On Music Row down in Nashville. And then I started running sound at the listening room and places like that, which is where I met you. So I went to school here for audio engineering.
Are you still running sound these days?
I don't do it a whole lot anymore. There'll be random occasions where I will, but mainly I kind of gave that up to do singing. I enjoy singing more, and I make more money singing too.
Yeah, and you're able to make a living just by singing?
Pretty much. I would say there's some random things that I do. Maybe some random construction, one-off things. Yeah. But mainly it's singing, because we sing in Nashville. Me and my wife sing 2 or 3 times a week, and then I play my own gig once a week in Nashville. And then on top of that, we'll go out of town a couple times a month and do private parties and weddings and stuff like that. So, mainly singing.
No, that's fantastic. So started out with the audio engineering and was able to transition. I mean, I don't think a lot of people get to say they can do that. So that's pretty fantastic, man.
Yeah, I feel like that doesn't happen a lot, maybe because it's 2 different sides of the brain, kind of, in a way. Because you're engineering, you're using the very technical side and whatnot. I'm fortunate to be able to know audio engineering, though, because as a musician, it's come in handy so many times. Yeah. I produced my own album and engineered it and everything. And just having to, as an artist, make yourself sound good and know how sound works. I'm really glad that I went to audio engineering school and know all that. It's been very valuable.
Yeah, it's a nice skill to have. Now, when you were working in the studio, were you observing different artists recording? How did that help you? What kind of, was that something you were able to put in your back pocket, and then when it came time to record your own album, that happened?
Yeah. The studio I worked at was a small demo studio. So basically, what that means is they would record songs that somebody else has written, whether the songwriter's there or in another country, and they're sending their charts in. And musicians would be hired by the studio owner, and they would all get together and they'd all have the charts that day, and then just maybe rehearse it once and then just play it and record it. I mean, it was like quick. Yeah. And it was amazing to me to see that. I had never seen that before. And just how quick they were and how on top of it they were, how, after such a short period of time of having the chart, 5-10 minutes, that they could play through the song and it would sound just like something on country radio, It was amazing. That really helped me to see the speed at which you could work, the efficiency at which you could work at. And, I don't necessarily condone working that fast. Obviously, wouldn't want to work that fast on your own artistry. They were doing it for demo work, for demo purposes. But, that really helped me, and not only to see the efficiency, but in knowing how to use the Nashville number system, the chart. If you've ever seen that before, like instead of writing the letters for the chords, they're numbers. Okay. And so it's just I love the Nashville number system, and learning that was really valuable to me also. Nice, and something I guess you can use if you want to pull in other musicians. To and I've used it so many times. Yeah. Yeah, a buddy of mine, he was talking about that, having charts, because it's my friend Corey Clay. We'll be talking with him at another podcast. And he was talking about, because he travels, his band, the Twains, basically plays between, he has a group of musicians in L.A., a group of musicians in Nashville, and a group of musicians in St. Louis. Mm-hmm. And it was, an old wise man had told him, you should get charts. And then for his birthday, gave him charts. So now he can, when he's trying out new musicians or adding people to it, he can just give them the charts, and then they know the songs. Yeah. So it sounds. I mean, being a non-musician myself, looking at that, it's like, wow, it's like having the script. Oh yeah, whoever came up with that Nashville number system, I mean, it is It's truly awesome. You can, like, if you're in a pinch and didn't have a bass player or something,
Yeah.
and you reached out to a bass player who had never played your stuff before, you can give them the chart, and they could be playing it right there. You know, I mean, it's just
fantastic.
It's a cool.
And that's what I think he had a situation. Somebody was either sick or just couldn't get in on time, or traffic, or flying in, or something like that. And it was just, you pick up another guy and then fill him in. It's okay, cool.
Yeah.
Right on. So now he has the tools that he needs to do that. What about quotes? You know, I like quotes. I don't always remember who said something, but you know, one of my favorite quotes is like, luck is preparation meeting opportunity. I saw you had a quote in your liner notes. What are a couple quotes that you kind of live by, or that are staples in your toolbox there?
One quote that I really like that I've heard, and I don't know who this is from, but the quote is, "The place God calls you to be is where your desire and the world's greatest need meet." And the reason I like that quote is because people are always like searching for that mystical purpose for their life, and that ever escaping purpose for their life. And sometimes we know what it is already, and we don't think we do, because we have desires for something. Maybe I have a desire for music, and somebody needs to hear the message that I'm writing.
Yeah.
You know, if I'm writing from my heart. And that's where they meet. My desire to do music, and I can help somebody else. Like, I'd say that's a pretty good place to be. So that's one of my favorite quotes, probably.
That's cool. And I look at that, and when you're saying that, it makes me think of the first track on your album, "Where Have All the Fathers Gone?" Mm-hmm. And that just seems to be, that's a deep track. What was the influence with that? What inspired that song?
Over the past maybe 3 or 4 years, I've really realized how important like the office of a father is to the world, really. Yeah. I mean, not only to children, but to the entire family. Just the father affirms their kids, their sons in their manhood. The father helps daughters to know, what how a woman's life should go and whatnot. The father has such an important role in the marriage, or the man does, and really leading it in the right direction. And I've seen the consequences not in my family or in my life, but in so many other people's lives, of there not being a father around, or the father not doing what he should be doing, and it really has dire consequences, from poverty to people not growing up with the right sort of attitudes that they should have, the right mindset, not thinking they can do things, or people growing up with backwards thinking, thinking that is just not the way that God intended for them to think. And fathers have a lot to do with all that running smoothly. And so that's what that first song is about. Have they gone to the bar? And is it very far? Are they traveling with a band, hired as a stagehand? Are they hooked on the reed? Oh, please someone tell me, where have all the fathers gone? Will they just be late? Or have they met their fate? Are they running from the law out in Wichita? Were they just waiting to leave? Oh, someone explain to me, where have all the fathers gone?
Yeah, man, so it's a great song.
Thank you.
So what gear do you use? I know a lot of people are really interested in gear or like the different sound of a guitar on a particular song. What guitar did you use for that song?
I used an Austin semi-hollow body guitar on that song. I can't remember the model of it, but it's the one I play a lot in my live shows.
Okay. Yeah, the guitar sounds great.
Thank you. And, it's not an expensive little setup either. It's just this Austin guitar that's not that expensive through a solid state kind of cheap Fender amp. And I'm really a fan of like kind of using inexpensive kind of cheap stuff, especially for recording, because you get the most characteristic sounds. Because on most recordings you hear all this nice equipment, and it starts to just get kind of mundane. Oh yeah, it's a nice sound, whatever. But sometimes you can get some real cheap equipment that is just cool. Even like cheap acoustic guitars recorded can be awesome. So anyway, that was the guitar on there. And then for the drums on this whole album, I don't remember if you saw it, but I had this little suitcase kick drum and a little snare that I use.
Oh yeah, I think I did. I recall that at the last show. Yeah.
So there's no cymbals or toms or anything. It's literally a suitcase with a kick drum pedal on it, and then just a snare, a stick and brush, and I'm playing the drums on it. And I try to be really minimal with everything that I'm doing. So yeah, I'm not really going for a real polished sound. So it's fun to kind of experiment with all these things that people maybe normally wouldn't use for recording. Yeah,
that's cool, man. That's cool. Well, it's been great talking to you. Is there anything you wanted to add that we haven't talked about?
I would just say check out my website because I'm traveling a lot. Playing shows and doing some stuff out of town as well as in Nashville. And if I'm coming to one of the listeners' towns, I'd love to have them come out and take a listen.
Yeah, definitely. And they're in for a treat because I think there's just a lot of variety.
Thanks.
And it's always great to see just such talented musicians just playing their heart out, telling great stories.
Thanks.
So yeah, man, it's an honor to... This is the first podcast that's been recorded, so I don't know when it'll be released, but
I feel honored.
It's been fun, buddy. It's been fun. Thank you. And once again, you can find Ben's music at wilsonsongs.com and check him out on Facebook and go check out a show when the opportunity is available. Thanks again, buddy.
Thank you, Ken.
All right, we're going to end it. We'll play the song that features Cassie, To the Moon.
Yes.
The memories roll in my head, back to the first words we ever said, when you entered my world. I knew then what I was made for. If you struggle from time to time, just picture your hand in mine. If you ever wonder how much do I love you, you can be so sure I love you to the moon. And now my only one, look how far you've come, from a child to the woman you will be. Oh, there's ocean in between. I know I'll miss you from time to time. I'll just picture your hand in mine. If you ever wonder how much do I love you, you I love you to the